Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Merlin Season 1, Episode 7, The Gates of Avalon. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within this episode. Sophia and her father Ulfric infiltrate Camelot so that they can sacrifice Arthur's soul to the Sidhe, while Morgana foresees Arthur's death in a dream, confiding in Gaius, while Merlin plays wingman and then later plays savior to Arthur. So after we rewatch the episode, we rank the episode against the other episodes within the same season and then each season against each other on two separate lists. One is the mostly objective list, which is absent emotion, and the second list is the personal list, which is all emotion. So as always, we start with the mostly objective rank values, which I have highlighted those that apply to this episode or that I feel apply to this episode. In the first thing to note, we obviously have our single episode supporting character introductions, which is the family of Sophia and Ulfric, father-daughter duo, and that is worth 1 point. We then have a multi-season supporting character development, which is worth 3 points, and this is in reference to Morgana. We've known for many episodes that she suffers from bad dreams and that Gaius gives her medications, potions, drops to basically help her through her dreams. However, in this episode, it's the first time that it's really confirmed that she has prophetic dreams and that she is a seer. And we learn from Gaius that this is an innate talent that she would have been born with, and that he had been watching her since she was a child and hoped that it wasn't true, but fears that it will be, as many times her dreams have come to pass, but that Morgana herself does not know that she is a seer. At the end of the episode, Arthur even asks if she's like him, if she has magic, and Gaius says that he doesn't know, but he hopes for her sake that she doesn't, obviously because Uther is somebody they're quite afraid of finding out that Morgana has magic, and Gaius feels that even though it is Morgana, his ward, his child, that he would kill her anyways, and that even though being a seer is an innate talent and therefore not a practice of magic, that it's close enough to magic that Uther would kill her anyways. And then the last mostly objective rank value that I felt applied to this episode was supporting relationship development. Now, normally supporting relationship development would be for like a relationship that goes for multiple episodes. However, the only relationship that's of a romantic nature that goes beyond a single episode in this entire series, based on my recollection, is Arthur Guinevere. All of the other love interests are single episode characters. Therefore, for this series, supporting relationship development counts even if it's a single episode character. And obviously in this episode, we have Arthur and Sophia. And Arthur and Sophia, they meet in the woods. He saves her from bandits. They then go on a nice date in the woods. And she tries to enchant him, but the knights mistake Arthur for a bandit, and she fails the first time. They then go out to the woods the next day to try again, and this time she does successfully enchant him. And once he is enchanted, he's in love with her. He goes to his father, asks to marry her, though his father does decline initially. Then, obviously, we have them going out to elope. However, he follows Sophia like a docile puppy to the gates of Avalon. And thank goodness that Merlin was there to save him, because he literally follows her right out into the water and then lets himself be drowned. And actually, she doesn't even have to hold him down. He falls backwards all on his own and sinks with no struggle whatsoever due to the enchantment, which does automatically break once Ulfric and Sophia are defeated by Merlin, and he wakes up the next day really confused about what he was thinking, because even though she was beautiful and he did have an attraction to her before the enchantment, that it wasn't to the level where he would have eloped with her. And with that, it is plus 2 points, so that brings us to a total score for the mostly objective list for this episode of 6 out of 10. As a reminder of our season 1 ranking list so far, in first place we have The Dragon's Call, in second we have Lancelot, third Valiant, fourth The Poison Chalice, in fifth we have The Gates of Avalon this episode, and then in sixth The Mark of Nimue, and in seventh we have A Remedy to Cure All Ills. So this episode is one of the examples of why I have two lists. The mostly objective ranking was pretty low at a 6 out of 10. However, I really enjoyed this episode, so I marked it a little bit higher than that. One of the things I really liked about this episode was the opening imagery of Arthur sinking as Sophia looks down at him from above the water, and then Morgana coming awake in a panic. I also like that the episode kind of goes full circle as we have Morgana waking up after a prophetic dream that we got to see, and then at the end of the episode, we have her getting her potion from Gaius, going to sleep, and then waking up again from a bad dream, though at the end of the episode, we don't get to see what she dreamed, but we do basically get an opening on a dream and an ending on a dream. Another call out from this episode was that there was really great interactions between Merlin and Arthur. Obviously, we know Merlin and Arthur become best friends. If you read fan fiction, they become much more than that. But in the actual series, they become best friends. And we've seen that kind of starting to come about in some of the other episodes, with kind of them having a back and forth. But it's not really obvious, like there hasn't been much of their interaction as a focal point in any of the episodes up to this point. I feel like this is the first one where you really get their friendship having blossomed and become a friendship at this point, not like a building to friendship, but actually there. And we can see that when at the opening of the episode, when they're hunting, Merlin makes noise so that the animal that Arthur is hunting can run away. And of course, Arthur scolds him for this, and then of course they have to save Sophia from the bandits. Then once they get to Camelot, we have Sophia's room placement. And at first, Arthur, because he's attracted to her, was like, put her room next to mine. And then he talks himself out of that, saying to put her across the castle because it's more comfortable. And then eventually, Merlin basically talks Arthur through his choices, and then eventually they do decide to put her room next to Arthur's, and they have a cute little back and forth while deciding where her room's going to be. And then of course we have Merlin playing wingman throughout a lot of this episode. We also get to see a lot more of Merlin and Uther interacting, which is really funny as well. Obviously, Arthur wants to take Sophia out on dates, but he has his duties as the prince to attend to, which he decides to skip out on, and he leaves it up to Merlin to let his father know and come up with some sort of excuse. And Merlin does so not once, not twice, but 3 whole times, ending up in the stocks each time. It's the third time Arthur's actually in the room, and Uther basically, at this point, has had it with Merlin, actually asks Gaius if he has some sort of mental affliction, asks somebody with a brain for who actually has a brain to give him an excuse and tell him what happened. And then he starts to, and then Gaius says that Merlin might have a mental affliction, that he's looking into it, and Uther hopes that there is a cure. Otherwise, they may have to start worrying about a food shortage, and this food shortage is due to the fact that he keeps putting Merlin in the stocks, which again he does the third time there as well. Obviously, then we have Merlin, once he finds out about Sophia, going to try to stop Arthur from following them and, putting in the effort to prevent it, confronting Ulfric and Sophia. He ends up knocked out, and Gaius has to later come and wake him up. But as soon as he wakes up, even before he's gotten over his grogginess from being like slammed into the wall and unconscious, he's running through the woods to go and save Arthur. He trips on a root, which is also like a very funny moment and brings a little bit of entertainment into what would otherwise be a very serious scene. And then continues, of course, running to save Arthur. He immediately, upon seeing the situation, uses magic to call Sophia's staff to him, kills Ulfric first, kills Sophia, and then jumps into the water with no hesitation, not giving up until he manages to find Arthur, pull him out, and then, of course, once Arthur wakes up and is so confused about what he was thinking and wondering why he can't remember what happened, they make the excuse that Merlin had managed to knock him out, and that is why his memory is spotty. And he cannot believe that that's the case, because obviously Merlin being able to knock him out, unheard of. But that's also just a nice little moment between them. So there's a lot of interaction between them in this episode, far more than there has been up to this point, which I enjoy because I feel like Arthur and Merlin are the main characters the show revolves around. So it's really nice when they do interact together. We also then, as mentioned before, have Morgana, this being the first episode where Morgana's seer abilities are confirmed. And she, of course, when she sees Arthur's death in her dreams, immediately goes to Gaius to confide in him because he's been treating her since she was a child. And the one thing I really didn't like about this episode, even though I felt it was a very strong episode overall, was the fact that he kind of immediately gaslights her and then, like, basically drugs her up, gives her a potion to go and, try to block her powers. Obviously, he has good reasons for this, with Uther being around and not wanting her to be aware of her powers, not wanting Uther to find out about the powers. But I feel like at this point we've seen that Morgana has enough caution around Uther without even knowing about her powers, that even if Gaius confirmed it for her to give her peace of mind, she wouldn't be stupid enough to really go and tell Uther, knowing how he feels about magic and how he's shown he's felt about magic on multiple occasions. Like, Morgana, I don't feel like she's stupid, so I feel like she would keep that secret since it's directly her safety in question, and that would give her somebody then that she could confide in, and she would at least know it was happening, so she wouldn't have to be afraid of herself. So I wish a different decision was made there, but I understand why they made this decision, knowing what we do about the rest of the series, as obviously we are rewatching it. But since she puts Gaius on to Sophia, Gaius, for once, is the one who's being a little bit nosy and entering rooms without knocking and snooping about. And like Merlin tends to do, he also gets caught, but not before he finds the staff and is able to read the markings on it. Once he goes back, he researches, he figures out that there's she, and then he puts Merlin on the case. And that is, of course, when Merlin stalks Ulfric over to the lake, and we get to see the she for the first time, which are originally in standard time are little blue lights that flit about really quickly. But because Merlin is magical, we see his eyes turn gold, time slows down, and we're actually able to see, once time slows down, the actual bodies of the she, which are little blue pixie-ish fairies that fly around. And honestly, I think they did a really good job on the effects in this episode. We also get special effects when Merlin is using the staves or the staff of Sophia to kill Ulfric and also to kill Sophia. And it's like basically he shoots lightning out of them. And I feel like given the effects that we've seen in previous episodes, they stepped it up a little bit in this episode on the effects. I like how they slowed down time, how they showed like all of the plants starting to slow down, the ripples on the lake slowing down, the cloaks blowing in the wind slowing down. And then we see the she, and then that's how we, of course, learn Ulfric was kicked out of Avalon for killing a fellow she, and it's his punishment, but he's trying to get his daughter off because obviously his crime is not her crime, and they're only willing to let her back into Avalon if she sacrifices a prince, which of course is Arthur, which she then does do, so on and so forth. Now, another strong thing, while obviously the relationship was fake, she tried to kill Arthur, she enchanted him. I do think that the father-daughter relationship is a nice father-daughter relationship. Like he's willing to go very far so that his daughter can have the best chance at life possible. And when she finds out that he's not going with her and that it would just be her, she at first is reluctant to leave him because she really loves her father. She wants to stay with him, but ultimately understands what he wants best for her and then is willing to then go ahead with the sacrifice, especially when she finds out that they've been promised a soul, so if they don't give them Arthur's, they'll try to take hers. But I think they have a nice father-daughter relationship. I think they're both willing to go pretty far for each other. It seems like it's a very healthy relationship. They have a strong bond. And I think that's a nice thing. So overall, there were some weaknesses to the episode, but overall, very strong episode. I scored it an 8 out of 10. And with it becoming an 8 out of 10, we now have an updated season 1 ranking so far for the personal list. And in first place, we have the Poison Chalice. Second place was the Dragon's Call. This episode falls into third place with the Gates of Avalon. Fourth place was Lancelot. Fifth was Valiant. Sixth was the Mark of Nimue. And in seventh place, we have A Remedy to Cure All Ills. And that brings us to our series ranking, where we are ranking each season against each other. Every season has 13 episodes, which means a maximum total score of 130 can be achieved each season. With the mostly objective score of 6, we now have a 42 out of 130 on the mostly objective list for the season. And then on the personal side, we have a total of 8, which brings us up to 46 out of 130. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Merlin Season 1, Episode 7, The Gates of Avalon. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.